Maggie Tulliver is one of George Eliot's characters. The book is The Mill on the Floss. Maggie tells her brother he has rebuked her severely over something that perhaps he was right in, but he's tough on her. And she's broken-hearted and says to him, it's a sin to be hard. She goes on to tell him that when they were young and she loved him more than anybody else, that he made a habit of hurting her heart and letting her go to bed crying rather than forgive her. She says to him, it's a sin to be hard. That line rebukes me severely as I reflect over the years how hard I've been at times with family and friends and others. I want no more of it. Now as the days gain speed and my time here, anyway, is, well, it feels like it is anyway, sprinting to a close. More and more I just want to forgive and be forgiven. Livingston Larned, many years ago, felt the same kind of guilt. And in this lovely but awful confession, which I've adapted a little for our purposes here, in that lovely but awful confession, he makes the confession public. He says this, listen, son, I'm saying this as you lie asleep, one hand crumpled under your cheek. I've stolen into your room alone. A few minutes ago, as I was reading my newspaper, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. I've been cross with you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you only dabbed your face with a towel. I chewed on you for not cleaning your shoes. I spoke angrily when you threw some things on the floor. I found fault at breakfast too. You spill things. Gulped your food. Put your elbows on the table. You put too much butter on your bread. As I left for work, you waved and called, "Goodbye, Daddy." And I told you to straighten your shoulders. It was the same this afternoon. As I came up the road, I saw you down on your knees playing marbles. There were holes in your pants. I humiliated you before your friends by marching you ahead of me to the house. Slacks were expensive. If you had to buy them, you'd be more careful. Imagine that. Imagine that from a father. Do you remember later when I was reading my paper how you came in a bit timidly? I impatiently asked you, "What do you want?" You didn't say a thing. You threw your arms around my neck and kissed me. And you held me with an affection that God has set in your heart, in which even neglect hasn't withered. Then you were gone, pattering upstairs to bed. It was shortly after that that I felt the guilt and the sickening fear. I've gotten into the habit of finding fault, regimenting, rebuking. This is my reward to you for being a boy. It wasn't that I didn't love you. It's that I expected too much of a boy. I was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. But there's so much in you that is good and fine and true. Like your enormous heart, which showed itself in your coming to kiss me goodnight, in spite of everything. Nothing else matters tonight, son. I'm here kneeling by your bed, ashamed. You wouldn't understand any of this if I told you about it. But tomorrow, I'll be real, Daddy. I'll be your chum. I'll suffer when you suffer, and I'll laugh when you laugh. I'll bite my tongue when impatient words come. I'll keep saying, he's nothing but a little boy. A little boy. I'm afraid I visualized you as a man. But looking at you now, crumpled and weary in your bed, I see you're only a little boy. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms, and I've asked too much. Too much. So said Livingston, learned to his boy. Me to you. Sometimes I find it almost unbearable to see or be with myself. And my only hope is that maybe God looks at me as I sleep and sees me all crumpled and weary. I know I'm not a boy, and I know that I can't make excuses for my unlikeness to Christ. But maybe if Livingston, Larned, with all his flaws, can look at his child and overlook maybe God, the flawless one, the perfect Holy Father. Maybe he can and does look at people like me, strugglers everywhere, and sees them too as weary and crumpled